So then, hello everybody. My name is Matt Gritt. I am going to be going through the end-to-end observability. We're going to step through an example of doing some troubleshooting using our platform. With me today is James Ashburn. He's my wingman, and he will be answering any of the questions that you put forward in the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in and he will answer them for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quit the video feed so you can stop looking at me and concentrate on what I'm going to show you. And then we're going to take it from there. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to walk you through an example of like a troubleshooting process for like an on-call engineer. So we're going to go from a step-by-step, from like an alert on a service level objective, and we're going to explore some of our metrics to help diagnose the problem. We're going to look at traces to identify which services are being impacted, and then we're going to look into some of our logs to confirm what the root cause is. So the typical sort of alert, diagnostics, remediation, find the root cause, and the post-mortem. So Sumo Logic, we centralize all the information from all the different kinds of data streams that you can send us. So it's more about the users are able to focus more on finding and debugging issues rather than translating between logs and metrics and traces. Our platform brings them all together in one place, a single pane of glass where you can see all of these things. So in this live demo, I'm an on-call engineer for a banking application. This banking application, runs on Kubernetes. It's in AWS. We've got various payment services, talking to accounts services, talking to an RDS database. So all of these are mission critical, and they run at all our banking locations. So I'm going to switch over to this Slack channel over here just to show you sort of like we've been getting alerts. So imagine it's 3 a.m. in the morning and I see an alert from Sumo Logic notifying me of an issue with our banking application. So we can see up here, we've got an elevated error rate, and this has triggered one of our SLOs. So if I click on the link, it's going to take me straight into our payment service panel. So I'm just going to refresh this so you can see what's happening at the moment. So I land right into the Sumo Logic page. It's centered on the SLA violation for the right time frame. And in this dashboard, you can see things like the error rates, the maximum error rates. You can see the error rate and the outliers. So this blue line is the actual error rate that we have. The pink cloud is the expected values we've set up with our outlier operator, and you can see that these are the kind of values that we expect to see. So if this blue line falls within it, that's fine. But you'll see that we also have these points where they go outside of that, and this is what's been triggering our alert. So this is an outlier. It's fired our alerts. So this, from a very quick, we can see what's been going on and get a handle on the situation. Other things on this panel, one of the most important, I think, is one of the critical elements is who's been affected by this outage. So here we have the customers impacted. So we can actually see things like customer ID, who they are, where they are in the world, and how many errors have affected them. So this allows our customer support teams to reach out and better support our customers, or in this instance. So other things you can see is we can see that our transactional volume dropped. It was, quite nice and high, quite steady, good. Then it dropped. We can see, how much dollars have been transferred. Again, this is good information. And then we can see come down, and we can see the error rates by pod. As I said, our service is running on Kubernetes. So each one of these pods is reporting its error rate. So as you can see, we've got one green pod, which is saying, yep, I've got no errors, I'm all good, my error rate is fine. And you can see that we've got lots of yellow, which is obviously indicating that, hey, there's something going on here. We might, we're getting quite high in our error, error rate. And then we've got all of these red pods. So this is where these pods are saying, hey, our error rate is higher than we expect. So there's a lot of these red pods. So that's looking like it's not just one pod that's having problems. It looks like there's a bigger issue. So if we're just going to pick on a, kind of any one of these these pods, what we can do is we can click on it and we get this sort of side panel that comes up that kind of gives us a quick summary of the information, and we can see some information about it, and we can sort of have a look over in what the infrastructure has. So we can see that we've got CPU and memory. We can see that we can open this up in different views, in an entity, dashboard, or log, traces, and metrics if we want to. And we can see all the other sort of parts of the environment that this belongs to. We can see what pod it is, what deployment, namespace, node, etc. So as I said, we're seeing this across many pods. So it's possibly a more consistent problem across the deployment. And this is how we can sort of drill down to find more information. So one of the things I want to do is I want to sort of look at this in this particular pod, say, or this deployment, because we've got so many being erroneous. So what we can do is we can open this up and we can say, hey, I want to see this in our entity dashboard. So clicking on the entity dashboard, because we've got Kubernetes, we can see a great deal more information about this. So we can see how many pods are running in this particular deployment, in this namespace, in our cluster. We can see, what problems we have here. We've got lots of connection errors. Most of the pods are running fine. We can come down and we can see that we've got, hey, connection refused. We've got a lot of connection refused errors coming up. So this is something that we're going to have to probably look at for this particular issue. You can see over here, we've got service account deployment. So this is where all of the errors are coming from. We can go down and we can see more and more information about it, CPU usage, etc., file system usage, etc., memory usage. But the thing that's bugging me the most, looking at this problem, is the connections refused and what's going on there. So again, we're going to sort of dive deeper into this, and we're actually going to click on this big red blob of errors, and we're going to go and have a look at that. We've got a bit of a summary again. We can see this is sort of metric information coming through, and we're going to click on the infrastructure. So one of the things here is what we can do is we want to see what's going on and why there's issues around that connections being refused, and why there's an issue between the account service deployment and the payment service deployment. So we can open this in our traces. So this is bringing up our traces for the account service deployment. It's bringing up all of them. And basically it's filtered to the account service, but we want to see which ones are refusing the connection. So we want to see which ones have errors. So we can add in another little filter here. I'm just going to type in error. And one of the good things is we have type ahead, so you can see that it's going to say, you mean number of errors. And I want that to be greater than 0. If it was equal to 0, they wouldn't have a problem. So this is where I want to say, hey, I only want to see things where there is an error message. So it's just taking a while to go through all of those transaction traces. And I'm going to look at something when maybe with a large number of spans, so you can see what we're doing here. So it's just closing on that. So I'm going to look at this particular transaction here. So you can see here we've got this little sort of breakdown of, hey, there's some MySQL mobile banking information coming through, some account information, some transaction services, and some payment services. We can see how long it took. We can see when it started. You know, what's the root service, etc., the actual trace ID, and what the status was. I'm going to click into this, and it's actually going to bring up the actual trace for us. So what are we looking at here? So we can see that, you know, we're looking at the Kubernetes cluster, the namespace, and the deployment. We can see that we are looking at, you know, what is the critical path between these. So there's some mobile banking information, accounts information, transactions, and payments. So here you can see all of these. We kind of call them icicles because they basically, this is the start of the trace, and it goes all the way across to the end of the trace. And you can see all of the different calls that are made in the trace and how they, you know, where they sit. Now you might notice that some of these have a red bar across the top. These are the ones that have the errors in. And if I wanted to, I could click on this and the non-errors would get grayed out. Just a nice visual thing to say, hey, which ones should I really be looking at? So we're looking at these errors, etc. So this is where we want to start getting into seeing, you know, what's going on in these, you know, these payment transactions. So we can see here, this is a payment service. We can see the operations. I can click on this, and again, that side panel will slide out for us. Again, it's giving us a summary of the span ID, the trace ID, information that, you know, what the status is, how long it took, etc. We can see any metadata associated with it. So if we wanted to, we can see, you know, what is the cluster, what is the container ID, and information about that, and the IP addresses of these things. Span logs, it's an error span log, and then we can see the infrastructure. So we're now able to see, link the infrastructure with what's going on in the trace. So what this allows us to do is we can go down and have a look at that payment service container and have a look at it and basically go, okay, well, we can see the CPU and the memory usage. It hasn't got a crash loop back off. So what we could do is we could say, well, actually, I want to, you know, look at the logs of this this container. So pull it up. This jumps into our standard logging query language panel, and it's bringing back the logs. You can see here we've got our cluster equals the mobile banking production cluster. We can see that it's this particular pod, and we can see that the container is payment services. So here we can see, you know, we've got nearly 5,000 results being brought back in a second. And, you know, this is where we can start to do that whole kind of go through those thousands of lines of logs, but we do have the log reduce functionality. So you can either click on the log reduce or you can write it into the query language. And what log reduce is going to do is it's going to go through and look at every single one of those log lines. It's going to make them, it's going to look for patterns, and the machine learning looks for patterns to see how many of a particular type we have. So this allows you to sort of get to see if there's anything that's happening once or twice, or if there's a common theme going through this. So now that it's done that, it's gone through all of those nearly 5,000 records, and it's brought out the patterns. We can start to look through these and see, you know, what's going on where are we getting errors? So we can see here that we've got some errors. This is basically could not open a JPA entity manager, so some transactions. So this is like, it's getting a status 500. Something's wrong. It can't open that particular entity. And we can also see here that we're getting connection refused. So as we noticed before, it does seem to be that we are looking at this and going, okay, our database is having problems with the fact that too many things are trying to connect to it and it can't cope. So as the RDS instance is getting overwhelmed with those too many connections. It's more than it can handle. So as the on-call engineer, my first priority is obviously to restore the application, and basically, allow the customers to get back to working, and then we can sort of, go back to investigate how to fix the root cause. So, we'd remediate this particular issue. One thing that could possibly be done would be to maybe increase the memory allocation, and then up the max connections allowed to the RDS. So that's kind of how we would do it for that sort of from end to end. So we've gone from the alert that we had. We've gone into where the alert shows you where what the errors are and what's triggered the errors, who's been impacted by those errors, which customers do we need to reach out to. We've gone in to investigate, what's been happening with pods. So we've gone in to explore, what are the issues with the pods. And from that, we've worked out, what the traces are that are in those particular deployments, and which ones have errors. We've taken a view of one of those particular ones and looked at the tracing to see what is happening at the start of the tracing to the end, and what's been going on to create that entire trace. And then we've gone and pivoted from those traces. So we've gone from the metrics into the traces, and then we've gone into the logs, where we've quickly gone through, and with our log reduce functionality, we've been able to basically say, look, it looks like there's this connection issue. It looks like our RDS is not being able to cope with the amount of connections, and what we can do to alleviate that. So that's kind of the end to end. But one of the other things I want to sort of take a step forward is, because this is, you have AWS, and we're an AWS, in this scenario, we're an AWS user. We do have something called the root cause explorer. So the root cause explorer, my compatriot James did a very, very good demonstration of this the other day. There is a video of it on our YouTube channels. I'd recommend going to see that. James did a fantastic job there. So I'm just going to go and talk about this in a high level, but if you want to see more details, go and watch that. So the root cause explorer makes it easy to visualize events of interest across the services and quickly deduce what the root cause is. So this data for the root cause explorer comes from things like your EC2 host metrics, your CloudWatch logs and metrics, CloudTrail logs, and they all populate the dashboards of the most important AWS monitoring data. And you get this right out of the box when you use our services. So what are we seeing here? So this is basically showing us, the time frame that we're looking at. We can see these are anomalies that have happened over the time. We can see the different types. We can see that we've got errors, we've got availability issues, latency issues, bottlenecks, throughput issues, successful issues, and load. So we were looking at this particular one, and this is the load. This is the RDS load one, which is of most interest. So we can actually see, if we wanted to, we can go and have a little bit of a closer look on this one and just sort of focus where it is and what it's going, what are the start times, what's happening in it. And then we can see what kind of the count is. So we can see this is quite regular kind of thing. You know, we can see that these are all clumped together and they're all related to the MySQL connections and the CPU load. So, you know, this is kind of something that we're looking at and we're saying, hey, we can definitely see that this aligns with our hypothesis, that, you know, it's the unexpected increased load has created an unexpected load on the connections to the RDS database, and therefore a rise in CPU, which might, you know, suggest slow queries might be a factor. And again, if you click on some of these, you can see that you have a summary of what's going on with that event of interest, and then you can go into the inspector, where if you wanted to, you could actually go in and either go and have a look at a recommended database of a particular, you know, performance insights, for instance. You could actually just go in and have a look at all of the logs, and this will pull back some logs if it's connected. But this is one of the things where you can go in and have a look at that. And once you've done those kind of, got those logs and things, we could sort of do a query on the MySQL database slow queries. And then we'll be able to sort of take that and find out which ones are, you know, performing excessively long. And then we can take these queries back to the applications team and either ask them to optimize the queries or help us to optimize the table so that, you know, it becomes more efficient. So that's another way of us getting to sort of the root cause. And again, because we were looking at the logs, etc., all of these can be set up to be alerts, and we can monitor these so that if this kind of thing starts to happen, we have an alert fire before that happens, you know, with our predictors. So with our predictor operator, so that we get informed that, hey, it's sort of trending to see, you know, towards where we think something is going to happen. And, you know, we can be proactive in dealing with them. So that's pretty much where, you know, what I've got for today for this particular webinar. So, you know, we've gone from like the alerts to a remedial cause of a, you know, a deeper root cause. We've been able to sort of, you know, follow the bouncing ball of going through it. We've looked through the followed the signal through across the logs, the metrics, and the traces. So you've now got a real sort of true observability platform where you can stitch all of that information together to give you a coherent view of your platform. And you're able to highlight unknown unknowns, and you get the platform to do the heavy lifting of not having to go and look through all of the different logs yourself, but it does it for you and collates them for you, so that you can get on with solving your solving the problem and, you know, managing your systems and keeping your systems reliable. So that's all I have at the moment. It's been a pleasure. We are going to have question and answers if anybody's got any questions they want to ask. Now's the time, and we'll answer them as best we can. So it looks like there's not many people that have got any questions. So that's great. I hope it's been worthwhile. I recommend coming along to see some of the other ones of these webinars that we're doing. And also, you know, please come and join us on our Slack channel. There's a link in the chat. It's slack.sumologic.com. There you will meet other clients of ours, as well as solution engineers like James and myself. And if you don't have a Sumo Logic instance, we do a free trial It's available at www.sumologic.com/signup. You get a fully functioning trial for, I think it's 30 days at the moment. Yeah, feel free to use it, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great day.